Welcome everyone back to week 14 in our 16-week series of Thriving in the New Normal. I'm so glad to have everyone here. We've got an exciting two-part series that we're going to be doing over the course of the next 2 weeks. And we're going to be talking about 7 habits of highly effective HVAC contractors. We've learned a lot since we started our journey in this 16-week series. As many of you as business owners have learned a lot as we've had this disruption that we've had to deal with. I think there's been a lot of discovery as far as how we can do business differently. There's some things that we have learned that even when things do start to open up and things do start to resemble a little bit more of the way that things used to be, we're going to have permanent changes in our business. We're going to have permanent changes in the way that we think and in the way that we look at the world. And so I'm excited as we begin to draw down and conclude this journey that we've all been on, that we're going to be able to talk about some of the reflections that each of our coaches have had as we've gone through this 16-week journey together. We start off every single call, I'd like you to go ahead and make sure you have this phone number recorded, and you can go ahead and text any of these key phrases. If you'd like to find more information about the topics that our coaches have talked about in the past, or if you just would like to reach out and find out more information on how they can help you with your business or help you with your territory. So we've covered a lot of different topics over the last weeks that we've been together. All of those topics are available for you to peruse and for you to go back and look at again in the Good Business Toolbox or the Amana Brand Business Academy. You can go to that website, you're going to click dealer, and then you're going to click training resources. You'll see the Thriving in the New Normal logo right there. And all of the past webinars and programs that we've had are there for you to be able to view and to be able to share with others that may be interested in the information that we've gone over. So as we move into this last phase of our 16-week series, I want to talk a little bit about disruption and change. And if anybody's ever received an email from me, you'll notice on the bottom of the tagline, there's these little Greek letters. And in fact, Matthew Plugoff one day called me up and said, "Hey, Ben, what is this gibberish that you've got down in the bottom of your signature line?" And I said, "It's ta pantareia." It comes from a Greek philosopher. His name is Heraclitus. And Heraclitus lived about 350 BC. He lived in Ephesus, which is in modern-day Turkey today. And he actually preceded Plato and Socrates, and a lot of people will credit his thinking to the way that Western society thinks today. And one of the things that he really struggled with was kind of this whole entire concept of how things ebb and flow in this fluidity of everything that is around us. And he talked about, he tells this story, or it makes this statement where he says, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." And what he meant by that is that river that is flowing, all of the water that is there will never be back in that same place again. All of the sediment will never be in the exact same order. All of the organisms and creatures that live in that water will never be in the same place. And he also said, that man will never be the same because we are always constantly changing and evolving. The other thing that he always talked about was the fact that you don't have anything unless you have polarization. There is no up without down. There is no right without wrong. There is no debt without credit. And so we always have to have these polarizations in order for anything to exist. And when you stop and you start to think about that, I think it makes a lot of sense as we start to look and struggle with some of these concepts we're going to talk about as we get into these 7 habits that we can each take away and reflect on as we move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. We're going to start off with Matthew Bratzis, and he's going to talk about a concept that he's really been focusing on over the course of the last weeks that we've been together. Matthew?
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. Hope everybody's out there enjoying a wonderful Friday around where I am. It's beautiful. It's a great weekend. It's Father's Day weekend. I'm a little excited about that, but thank you, Ben. What I'd like to talk about is compressed time, right? One of the challenges we had this week was coming up with what are some of the things that we've learned. And one of the things, quite honestly, is that EGIA, at EGIA, we've had to reevaluate our perspective on time. We're used to setting up these training sessions that we'll spend a half a day or a full day, and we'll go over so much knowledge, and we'll be able to spend so much time with a group to make sure they understand finance, understand the perspective, and what are they going to come away with. And all of a sudden, that's been taken away from us, right? We don't have the ability to travel to a group of people and spend 4 hours or 5 hours or spend a day with them. We can't put people on a Zoom webinar or a GoToMeeting or whatever, on a virtual training for 7 or 8 hours. So our time has been compressed significantly. And our challenge has been, how do we deliver meaningful training in way less time? How do we get the same kind of quality? Because we don't want to shortchange everybody, and that knowledge is incredibly important. So how can we compress our day, right? How can we compress a full day of knowledge into a 45-minute class? Is there a way to do that? And that was one of the biggest challenges we had when we first started this thing. Go ahead, Ben, to the next slide. And what we started looking at is, this quote is one of the quotes that I really love. It's always safe to, right? It is always safe to assume not that the old way is wrong, but that there may be a better way. And one of the things Mike Brisbane and Eric Goody, Jeremy Chandler, Donica Wilson, me, our team of trainers have gotten together is, how do we be better? And to make it better, do we have to keep doing things the old way? Do we have to keep the old way doesn't fit anymore, right? It just didn't become an option. So we had to literally sit down and put our thinking hats on and sit there and think, how can we come up with a better way? We're being forced to reinvent our own mousetrap. And is there a way that can be even more successful, even better? And what we've come up with is certain key learnings that we're now able to do that have really started to impact our messaging, our delivery. And what we're doing is seeing better results than we've ever seen, with 1/3 or 1/4 of the time being taken up. So there are a couple key learnings, key lessons that we've learned. If you go to the next slide, Ben, that I really want to make sure that people pay attention. So what is it that we've learned to do differently? Be more flexible with people, right? It's before we used to be able to walk in and just demand, we're going to have 4 hours, or we're going to take 5 hours, and you're going to learn things our way, and you're going to close your computers, turn off your phones, and pay attention to our classroom. Now we're having to be flexible with people. We're having to adjust to people's time because people are working at home. We're setting trainings up in the evening. We're setting trainings up on the weekends. We're doing things really, really early. We're being much more flexible. The next one is, go to the next one, Ben. Embrace the technology. We used to think that you can't train people over virtual meetings. You can't train people over Zoom. You can't train people over GoToMeetings. Well, guess what? Zoom and GoToMeetings are the new classroom for EGIA. That is the way we're going to be able to reach out to people, and that's never going to change. We've learned to embrace that technology that's out there and is available, and help our people and the people that we're training embrace and learn this technology and how we can utilize this technology. The other thing we learned is we've got to start understanding how people learn things, right? We've got to, go ahead, the next one. We've got to start understanding, how do people learn? What is it that if we present things and we can present them in a shorter period of time, what is it that helps them capture the information better, right? Is more efficient with that. And really that leads to the last point, which can sum up all of those points. The single most important lesson that we have learned at EGIA is, ask people what they need and then listen to what they need. One of the biggest challenges is we used to do 4 or 5, 8-hour trainings, and we had an agenda. EGIA had an agenda of things we wanted to get out, and we needed to make sure everybody know this. And now what our team has been able to do is actually sit there and ask our clients, ask the contractors, ask the TSMs, what is it that you need? What is it that you want to learn? And by doing that, we've made our messaging and our educational system that much more efficient, and that much more effective. And the results are showing, because people are learning what they need to learn, and we're letting them guide us. So that's a big thing I would do in life, not just in turning, which is don't be afraid to talk to people and ask what they need and then listen and fill in that way. Ben, that's my lesson for the day. I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Really appreciate that insight, and we'll look forward to hearing how you talk about that a little bit further and dive into it deeper next week. So what I wanted to talk about was our perspective. And I think this is a really important thing for us to consider as we come out of this, as we continue through it, and as we apply it to our life. And there's 3 short stories that I wanted to share with you. And I've got bullets for those that need bullets also that are going to be associated with each of these stories, so that we can kind of give you an action item or a takeaway with each of these stories. So the first story, this is a story that I remember from a long, long time ago. When I used to go over to my grandmother's house, she had this cabinet that was in her office that had all of these great books in there. And one of my favorite books when I was in elementary school that I used to go over and read was this story of these blind men and how they described an elephant. It's an old Sufi tale that was developed, a long, long time ago, and has been used to really describe an important concept. For those that have not heard the story, or just a quick reminder on the story, there's these blind men, and they're together, and they hear that an elephant has just been brought into town. And they each have never had the opportunity to experience or know what an elephant is, so they decide that they're going to go and find out what the elephant is. Each one of them is pushed in different places around the elephant, and the only way they can see or experience the elephant is by touching it. So the elephant stands very still, and each of them reaches up and starts to touch the elephant. Well, one goes ahead and he grabs the trunk and starts to feel the trunk, and he thinks in his mind, an elephant's much like a snake, as far as I can tell. And the other one, he grabs the ear and he starts to feel that, and he can feel the powerful ear moving back and forth and blowing air, and he says, elephant's much like a fan. Another one grabs the leg and he feels that powerful leg, and he says, it's like a pillar, it's like a tree trunk. And another one touches the side of the elephant and says, an elephant's much like a wall. It's unmovable. It's this big, huge, unmovable force that's there. Another one grabs the tail and feels that, and it's a rope. And the last one grabs the smooth tusk and says, it's much like a spear. So after they've had the chance to experience the elephant, they get back together and they start to talk, and they share their experience that they have as far as what an elephant is. And a fight breaks out, and they start fighting because they think the other ones are lying. Their experience of the elephant was each unique and both true, but it was not the totality of the truth that was there. And the big lesson that we need to learn is our subjective experiences can be, and many times are, true, but they inherently are limited by our failure to be able to see the whole entire object or the whole entire experience that we're looking through. And so we do not have the totality of all of the truths together. And so the first thing that I want you to think about when we look at perspective is be open to hear what other people have in order to get the totality of that truth. I think that's a big takeaway that we need to take away when we start to look at lenses. The next story I want to share with you, this is a problem, and it comes into solving problem and how we look at problems that are out there. And so as the story goes, there is a building owner, and they have an elevator system in there. And when they built the building, it was a state of the art, but it was built in the early 1900s. As the building changed use and was used for different things, that elevator system had done well until all of a sudden, the owner started getting a lot of complaints about the speed of the elevator and how long people were waiting and the congestion at the elevator. And so he went to his maintenance person and said, hey, we're getting a problem. In fact, we're going to start losing tenants in this building if we don't do something to fix the elevator, because they believe that it's impacting their productivity, and people are threatening to cancel their leases and move out. So we need to figure out what we need to do to update this elevator system. And so the maintenance person goes out and starts to talk to many other people, and he gets a lot of other ideas and concepts, and he comes back and he says, well, here's a couple of ideas that I've got. We can upgrade the elevator to the newest and fastest model. That's going to cost about $1 million for us to do that. We could install an additional elevator. That right there is probably going to cost us, less, and it's going to be about $500,000 for us to get that new elevator put in there. We could book rooms by, wake times or stagger the usage that we have for the tenants that are in this building, and we could try to figure something out along that aspect. We can install some advanced software, again, at a very high cost of close to $250,000. And the building owner is frustrated because he didn't want to put that large of an investment into the elevator program that he had. That evening, he goes out and he's having dinner with a friend who happens to be a behavioral psychologist. And that behavior psychologist and him get to talking, and he shares his dilemma and his problem that he's having with his tenants in there. The behavioral psychologist looks at it a little bit differently, and he says, you know what? When we think about people are, if we distracted them, if there was something we could do to get them to think about something else while they're waiting for the elevator, we might be able to solve this problem. He said, in fact, we could install some sort of a arcade console or something where people could play video games, and while they're waiting for the elevator, they'd be distracted, and they may even let the elevator go if they're really getting an all-time high score, and it would be a fun, entertaining way to distract them from the time that they're sitting waiting for the elevator. And then he said, but what people like the most is themselves. I bet if you were to go out and install a mirror in every single hallway where that elevator was, people will look at themselves in the mirror, they'll be self-absorbed, and they will not be bothered as much as far as how long it takes for the elevator to arrive and for the elevator to go. And the owner of the building thought, what do I have to lose? So he installed mirrors in all of the elevator lobbies, and sure enough, the complaints went down. Everybody stopped complaining about how long the elevator was taking because they were looking at themselves in the old mirror. How do we look at the problems that we have? And we need to be able to take a perspective where we step back and look at problems from different angles. If he never talked to the behavioral psychologist, he never would have discovered that there was a simple solution to the problem that he thought only could be solved by a mechanical solution that he had there. And so are we solving the right problem when we look at the challenges that we have? Last story I want to share with you. Gregory Potemkin happened to be a lover of Catherine the Great back when Russia had a great, vast empire. And because of that, he was given an area, which is today the present-day Ukraine, and he was overseeing that. And Catherine the Great sends him a message and says, I'm doing a tour with a bunch of dignitaries. I want to see how things are going on in my land. And so we're going to be coming down, and we're going to be going down the river. And we just want to see what is happening so we can see where we can provide resources and what we can do. Well, Gregory Potemkin was very concerned because there was a lot of poverty, there was a lot of starvation, there was low unemployment, or there was low employment in the area. And so what he did is he went and he figured out the course that Catherine the Great was going to be taking on the river. And in front of the river, he built up all of these facades on the front of the buildings. And he actually hired townspeople to walk in front of these facades back and forth and to look as productive as they possibly could. As Catherine the Great and her entourage goes down through the elevator or through the river, they look and they see this very productive, bustling commerce and everything happening. And she's very impressed by what she sees. But as soon as she turned the corner, he would break down all the facades, go to the next town, put the facades back up, and have the same people going ahead and walking and the actors there to give this illusion of prosperity and productivity that he did. What ended up happening because of all of these Potemkin villages that put there is they did not get all of the resources they needed to fix the problem with the poverty and all of the other issues that were there, because they had the appearance that everything was good. And he was actually, short term recognized as running a very responsible region of the empire, but it didn't help the people that were in that situation. And so the question I want to challenge us as business owners, what Potemkin villages do you have in your own company? Are you looking at it from the shore or are you looking at it from the river? And those are the three concepts that I really want you to think about. The totality of truth. I want you to think, are we solving the right problem? And what Potemkin villages may I have in my business today? And I'll wrap this up next week when we get back into perspective and how we can look at these things. So Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, that's great. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy Juneteenth. I hope you're all well. Hey, my topic, the whole thing, the 7 habits of highly successful contractors. And, reflecting on what Ben said, this quote unquote totality of truth, right? That I mean, in and of itself, that's a big idea to unpack. But I want to talk a little bit about this thing I've been really kind of stewing over. Only the paranoid survive. What's going to happen in the future, and what choices would we all have made differently if we would have known, to Ben's point, kind of a broader picture? We all experienced in January and February and March what felt like a staggering existential crisis that crept slowly and then exploded in front of all of us. And I can distinctly recall conversations with Tom, conversations with Mr. David Holt, and David Holt in particular. As the crisis unfolded, I remember David said, "There goes my year." Right? He literally said, like almost word for word, "There goes my year." And that's probably true for a lot of people on this call who had schedules booked out from January all the way until the holiday season in December. That this thing came along and literally obliterated many people's concepts of how they're going to live, how they're going to make money, how they're going to take care of their clients. And it felt sudden. But the fact of the matter is, in September of last year, the White House's Economic Council presented the administration with a very clear report talking about the potential economic impacts of pandemic-type occurrences that were beginning to occur in China in particular. That was last fall. The question I like to think about is, had I known that then, would I have made different choices? If I had a 4 or 5 month head start, would I have worked differently on the things that were weaknesses in my business that I would have been able to make better predictions about? And I doubt there's anybody on this call that wouldn't have liked a 5 month head start. And so when I talk about paranoia, I don't talk about it in a clinical sense. I'm not qualified to make that type of determination, nor would I. I'm talking about it in the sense that in order to be successful, it's equally important that you scrutinize your blind spots and you ask yourself where you're exposed and what types of threats can take you out or severely hinder your ability to take care of your clients and your company. By the way, source material on that is New York Times, and I'd be happy to send you the link via Nick Kristof. So the question I'd like to ask is, what scares you in the next year? Right? What things really keep you up at night right now? What 1 or 2 things could nail you? And have you been asking that question, or have you been saying, well, it feels like the market's kind of getting back to normal. Fewer people are wearing masks. Travel restrictions seem to be loosening up. But I think that this is an important question because we're not done yet. And we shouldn't get complacent, and we shouldn't act like people aren't dying. We shouldn't act like huge industries and businesses haven't actually just been scraped off of the economic map right now. It's still happening. And we still have to deal with it, despite the fact that we're a quote essential service. What scares you in the next year? And what 1 or 2 things could nail you? You look at our industry, there's some lessons that we can probably learn. If we would have had a 5 month head start, fragile supply chains, transportation constrictions, manufacturing bottlenecks, shelter in place restrictions, plant-wide health mandates. Right now, we're seeing the impact in real time, and many of our friends and contractors are dealing with the fact that the sheer unexpectedness of this, and that it wasn't something that was being thought of, has now, to a greater or lesser extent, put us in a position to play catch up. And, on a personal or on a contractor level, Were you blindsided by this, right? Were you in a good cash position? How were you? What was your liquidity position? Did your leads dry up super fast? Did you have to struggle to retain your employees? Consumer insecurity, unusual seasonal downturns. Were you caught, unawares or flat-footed by this? We all have to confront our vulnerabilities. That's when I think about the habits of highly successful contractors. All of us have weaknesses. All of us have vulnerabilities. And we also have to confront the limitations that are inherent in our own companies so that we can be proactive, so that we don't find ourselves reeling, in another 3 to 4 months or another 12 months. So I think, to the question, what are the habits of highly successful contractors? They don't believe that hope is a strategy. They actively work to identify both the strengths and the weaknesses in their businesses, and they take the correct steps to prevent themselves from getting blindsided by unexpected events that they didn't have an advantageous head start around. So I hope that makes sense, and I would encourage anybody to think about it as it pertains to their own book of business as well. So be well, you guys. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for the opportunity, as always, to share a few thoughts.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. You guys, let's rock and roll. So Ben, we're going to blow through these a little bit. Everything I've heard, it's interesting because it's baked into our philosophy as a business, right? We literally put it into the brand. CI Web Group's motto is technology, strategy, network, and mindset. It's constantly evaluating what technology you're using, constantly going through the reiterations of your strategy, what's working, what's not, what's next, making sure that you're surrounded by the right people, listening to the right indexes and feeding your mind the right information, and making sure that you have the ability to control your mindset, that how you think, how you believe, how you feel is serving you well. It's part of our brand. 12-step roadmap was identified to achieve accelerated results. That's the sole purpose, to achieve accelerated results. That means to compress time. How do we leverage technology, process, and enhancements in order to be able to compress time to get results faster? And on a personal note, my own brand is living, loving, laughing, learning, and live, being present in the moment. That's who I am. And that's who I want our team to be. That's what's important, right? Is if being an entrepreneur is hard, why not set a culture and a brand that says, I'm going to live in the moment. I'm going to show up, suit up, participate. I'm going to laugh through those moments. We are going to learn constantly. We are going to smile, and we're going to enjoy life. Everything in my mind, when Ben says he's got bullet points, thank you, because my mind processes bullet points. It's all ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, systems. So I know I sound like a broken record, but there's a reason for that, because when you have a system, you can adopt something that's going to prevent you from being in a position where this pandemic is hurtful. It doesn't have to be. By doing the right things in the right order at the right time, by having a system to implement what's necessary, understanding how they're connected, the interdependencies, the interconnections, understanding that if I don't do the right thing in the right order at the right time, there is pain and consequence. I don't want to learn through pain. I understand that the way we learn is either through a significant emotional event, which is usually a tail whipping, or it's consistency and repetition. Those systems allow us to focus on consistency and repetition, reevaluating who we are, what we stand for, what we do. Does it serve us well now, and will it serve us well in the future? There are some things that are coming. Kids are going to grow up. My 20-something, he's coming. All of ours. They are next. Weather's going to change. Technology is going to continue to advance. What are we going to do about it? All right, next. Here's what helps us. We have complete clarity. When my business coach sat down and made me define my why, I was 20. It hurt my whole soul to go through that process. I was 20 and he said, but why? But why? I sound like a toddler, but why? But why? Why are you doing it? And I said, I don't know. I just want the freedom to choose when I get older. Jeez. And that became my why. I want the freedom to choose. That was my clarity. So as a business owner, knowing I want the freedom to choose, every decision that I make, Everything I focus on allows me to accomplish that goal. I want the freedom to choose. I'm not sure yet. If you have clarity, you will be able to focus, but without it, you cannot. Without clarity, if you don't know what you want your life to look like, I didn't just say business because it's bigger than that. You can create things that conflict with each other if you operate in a silo. Life is business, business is life, it's all connected. Money is as great as your need for air. Without focus or without clarity, you cannot focus. If you don't focus, you won't know what to execute on. If you don't execute, you won't win. Next. Clarity and desire. Complete clarity and freaking that thing inside of you. How bad do I want it? How bad do I want this as an entrepreneur? Focus and competence. Do you have the right tools? Do you have the right system? Are you focusing on the right things that are going to get you closer to where you want to be? Or are you doing the exact opposite? By human nature, it actually pushes away the very thing you want. By nature, if you want more time with your spouse, being a brat's not going to get you great time, right? And it's interesting to see how human nature literally pushes away the very thing we want. I want to grow my business, but I'm going to be a jerk to the vendors that are trying to help me get there. That's not how we move forward, right? We have to be very, very careful. So clarity, do I know where I want to go? Desire, do I have the passion that's going to help me get there? Focus, am I focusing on the things that are going to help me get closer to my goal? Competence, do I have the right systems and people and processes? Next is going to be execution and capacity. Do you have the ability when presented with new information to change your mind? That is a big, big statement. Do you have the ability? We've all been programmed and wired to the nth degree, down to the soul of our entire existence. Execution and capacity means we have the ability to change who we are when presented with new information that can help us get closer to what we want. These three things operating in tandem produce results. Next slide. I get all excited about this stuff. You know how I am. The process. Here's what I did. I went back. We do an exercise with our clients called Keep Doing, Start Doing, Stop Doing. Do more of what's working, stop doing what's not working, and figure out what the heck is next. What am I not doing yet that I know I should be? So I pulled this up. This is from 2 years ago with an HVAC contractor. You know what the difference is? Virtual selling was not new to this contractor. AI chatbots was not new 2 years ago. E-commerce was not new 2 years ago. They went through this exercise of prioritizing what's working. I know I'm getting leads from my website. I know it's coming on these particular services. That's because I have great content and I'm on page 1 of Google. Let's do more of that. I know that consumers are starting to search online for prices, and instead of being afraid to show prices, I'm going to compete with the big boxes, and I'm going to better develop my brand and differentiate myself in order to be able to do the same thing. Going through this exercise a minimum of once a year, a minimum, you technically have to reinvent yourself. When things are going great, break it, because that's when we grow. The pencil sharpener sharpens a pencil, adversity sharpens the man. Right now in this pandemic, I have dealers who are opening up multiple locations. They're hiring new, their problems are different. Why? Because they didn't wait and say, I'm not going to adopt technology. They didn't wait and say, I don't want to mess with e-commerce. No one would do that. We only present things at the kitchen table. They didn't wait. They were already doing this, so they're not feeling the pain of the pandemic today, because they already challenged themselves minimum of once a year to identify what's working, do more of it. What's not, let's stop. And what's next? This looks like a new strategy from the last 16 weeks of presentations. This is a 2-year-old strategy that I pulled off of a napkin that we had in a bar at an airport where we went through this exercise together. It's not new. Okay. Don't get overwhelmed. You guys, systems, okay? If it's not urgent and not important, eliminate it, stop it. Other people's problems, some social media, things, the news, media, things that drain your soul, eliminate it. If it is urgent and important, that means you didn't take care of something that was important but not urgent. That's self-reflect. You knew you should have done it, but you didn't, so now you have to. Self-reflect. Put everything that comes to your plate in a box. Get it into a box. This is when the ping pong ball in a woman's head don't serve you well. You need squares and boxes in a man's head to put it in a box, because once it's in a box, you can deal with it. You can adjust it, and you can take ownership and accountability for changing it, and knowing that you impacted wherever you are, whatever you do, whatever you have right now. It's a consequence of however you think, whatever you've done right now or in the past. We can change it once we know what it is and when we know what to do with it. Okay, next. You guys got to give yourself some grace. Stuff happens. Business is not just to skyrocket up. It's not how it works. Give yourself a bigger window. You're going to go up and down, up and down, up and down. You don't want to see it go straight up. If it goes straight up, you got to figure out something, because up doesn't last forever. Technology is going to change. Human behavior is going to change. They're going to adopt a new gadget, a new gizmo. They're going to stop driving. They're going to start flying. They're going to buy things out of their brain with a blink of an eye. Who knows what it's coming, but it's changing. So, yes, Stephen, that's what's going to happen. So give yourself a little bit of grace. Change is okay. It's okay that this stuff is a little bit complicated. Like, it's cool. Just smile on your way through it. Okay, next. So, I wanted to provide you guys with something that's a simple win. So what are you not doing that you should? We're going to give everyone who does text us this week a new piece of technology that allows you to start, just put your foot in the door with some e-commerce. We'll put a system on your website. It allows you to sell filters and some other external things. It doesn't cost you anything to get this going. It's mailbox money. It can go on monthly subscription. I just want to get you started in the easiest way. I know all of you guys text when everyone on this call gives something away for free. It's visible. We can see that all the text messages come in when someone's giving away something for free. So that's what this is. But I am telling you, it's bigger than this. Don't just go for the easy route. You guys, people have things. Everyone on here, these trainers, can help you grow your business. You got to commit to the process. Don't just put your toe in the water and go for the free solution, because the planet is not going to stop moving. It's turning whether you're participating or not, whether you're evolving or not. With that, I love you guys. Thank you for allowing me to freak out.
Dude, Jennifer, always a pleasure, man. I love the fact of the clarity, because you've got to get clear on what you want. And I'm sure many of you have already read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, Know Your Why, Leaders Eat Last. Simon Sinek is really great to help you discover what that clarity is and find your why. I also love that you used a word that said self-reflect. Very cool. Matt, plug off, blind spots. I love that. Dude, hope is not a strategy. Very cool. So here at Power Selling Pros, what we kind of discovered is that what you focus on, you will find. So along with that clarity, there's that focus, right? What you focus on, you will find. Look at that big head of mine, huh? And it's interesting because I'm kind of a control freak. I like things to go in little boxes, and I like things to go in, because I'm such a creature of habit. But there's so many things that we can't control. I mean, we can't control this pandemic. You can't control the weather. You can't control time. You can't control other people. And what's interesting is what we realized during this pandemic is we were never really in control. It just felt like we were, but the truth of the matter is we were just comfortable in this normalcy, if you will. So and then what we discovered with Power Selling Pros is when everything just stopped over a course of 48 hours and everything seemed to cancel, right? Is Brigham, our owner, came to us and said, all right, we are going to serve our way out of this. He said, we're going to serve our way out of this. And I'm like, what does that mean, serve our way out of this, right? He's like, look, this is our core values. This is our belief system. This is our philosophy of why, right? We're going to be proactive. We're going to be intentional. We're going to focus on serving. And so really it aligned with our core values. And so we still had to make this shift from doing in-person to now virtual. But what we started to really focus on, and again, it's what you focus on, you will find, is we started focusing on what was important. And for us, it was focusing on your people. So we came up with a program that was a training and coaching program for customer experience training, employee experience, but it's what we've always been doing. And we just kind of changed it over to what matters most. And it was about your people, which is your culture, which is your teammates, right? It is that sustains your business. So, you know, it was really easy to kind of want to jump into this fear mentality of, oh my goodness, you know, the sky is falling. And some of us allowed fear to kind of control our minds and really kind of control our actions. But, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, though. Fear is one of those natural human instincts, right? It's what our 2 million year old brain is designed to protect ourselves, you know, in the moment, you know, in a state of survival, you know, fight or flight or freeze. But the thing is, if you do one of those three things every time some sort of pain occurs or some sort of fear happens, you're constantly going to be fighting. You're constantly going to be freezing, you know. And what I've discovered is that's really no way to live your life. You know, the beautiful gift of being a human is that we are resilient as species. We are adaptable by nature. And so we're not shaped by how things are going when things are going well, but people are truly shaped, I think, during the most difficult times. And so it's our job to embrace this season that's been given to us. And so I think regardless of what's going on, we are in control of ourselves and our actions and our behaviors, right? And so what I want us to do is to step back and what is it that you're focusing on? And make a cautious decision of focus on what matters. One of the unique things, and we were listening to Matthew talk about doing some travel. And one of the things he said is, man, it was so nice to get back home. Because I think all of a sudden, I've traveled for years. Tom Whitman has traveled forever. And all of a sudden we're like, oh my goodness, I have a wife and kids and a dog. Who are you guys, right? So it was a time for us to really refocus on what was really important. And so that would be my question is, what are you focusing on? And Erica's going to talk next week about some things you just have to let go, right? Sometimes you got to take a step back. You got to make an effort to focus on what matters. And sometimes you just have to let those things go. And so when you look at an effective leader of being proactive, that's why I love, Matthew, you talk about blind spots. This won't be the only pandemic we ever experience in the world or on a personal level, right? This will happen again. Something will happen. You've got to be prepared. And so I love the fact that Jennifer says, get certain on your why. Know what you believe in. And so we at Power Selling Pros, we do coaching and training, but we have a philosophy of our why, which our philosophy is to help build long-term relationships with your clients. So we want to help you build these relationships to create this customer into a client. So my question is, where is your focus today? And you got to get laser focused, right? Where? Those are binoculars. Maybe I'll use this little laser focus. Hey, Erica, are you on here with me? Don't be so shy.
I sure am.
We decided to wear our smart glasses today because we wanted to be like all the other smart people on this call.
Well, I absolutely love everything that you said, Stephen, and we definitely will talk more next week. But I can tell that's your favorite F word, focus. And focus on those things that matter. It doesn't matter what talent you have in the world. It doesn't matter what skills you have in the world. Nothing of how good you are matters. What matters is your choices. And to be honest, I got that from Harry Potter when I watched that this weekend. Dumbledore says that. Something along those lines. It's not the skills or the talents that make you great. It's the choices that make you great. And what are your choices? What are you focusing on? What are the choices that you're going to make that's going to matter most and help you in your life, in your business, and in your relationships. So we're excited to talk more with you guys next week.
Thank you so much, Ben. David Holt?
Hi guys, David Holt here. Sorry I can't be with you live. I'm teaching a class right now for a bunch of contractors trying to learn how to become performance-based salespeople. So I thought I'd do this little recording so you guys still have a little insight from National Comfort Institute. So my topic today is thinking outside the box. And many years ago, one of my HVAC coaching clients handed me this as a gift. And it says on here, only those who see the invisible can do the impossible. So this little box is good, but the whole idea of this thing is it's got a little man that sits on top of the box. And he's kind of outside of the box, and he's thinking. You can see there in the video, he's got his hand, or in the screen, he's got his hand up there like he's thinking, right? So this guy is thinking outside the box. And what's he doing when he's thinking outside of the box? What does this really mean? Well, the concept of thinking outside the box starts with this idea behind me. Let's put a little image up there behind me. It's got 9 dots. And the 9-dot puzzle is take those 9 dots, take a pen or pencil, start at one of the dots, and continue using 4 straight lines and connect all 9 dots without lifting your pencil. Okay? You've probably seen it before. It's an old puzzle, but it's a puzzle that's designed to help you think outside the 9 dots. Well, this is 9 dots, right? It's called a Rubik's Cube, right? And this one happens to be one I just solved just a little while ago. I use these things as mental exercise, but also as teaching, because you think about business, and business is full of crazy ideas and lots of moving parts, right? So I got payroll, I got insurance, I got employees that are sick, I got people that got COVID, I got all kind of stuff, and I've got just things that are disrupting and messing up my entire life. And now everything is kind of out of sorts, right? And now I got to know, how do I put this thing back together? What do I need to do? Well, how do I need to think to make this thing work? And what happens when my company becomes even more complex? Like maybe it's instead of a 3x3, now it's a 5x5 cube. I mean, it really starts getting crazy. But you know what? The principles that are required to solve this one are the exact same principles required to solve this one. And if you know what you're doing, I mean, if you go on YouTube, you can find all kind of people that can actually do the cube just like I'm doing right now without even looking at it. I'm not looking at it. You can hear it going along here, right? I'm sitting here making this thing spin like crazy. And yeah, I look at it every once in a while just to kind of see where I am. But just in a matter of a few short turns, guess what? Magic appears. It's back like it's supposed to be. Well, how does that happen? Thinking outside the 9 dots or thinking outside the box requires innovation, requires us to set aside statements that begin with, that's the way we've always done it, and decide to do it differently. Because I tell you, if you do things the way you've always done them, you're going to get results that are very similar to the results you've always gotten, right? Here's an interesting thing. My buddy Ron Smith, the guy that wrote the book on HVAC called HVAC Spells Wealth, one of the things he says, David, if you always do the same thing you've always done, you may think you're going to get the same thing you always got. But the reality is this: if the rest of the world is changing and they're getting better at what they do, as you're sitting here doing nothing but the same thing, they're actually sanding away at your business. They're eroding your business because of their innovation, because of their new way of thinking. And what's happening is they're continuously pounding your business till eventually your business falls apart and crumbles, because their innovative way of thinking is saying, oh, you know what? If I just move this to right here and this to right here, if I just start making the right moves, all of a sudden things start coming into place. Oh, so that one goes there and this one goes here. I guess you should be able to see what I'm doing, huh? But what's happening is I'm starting to get things lined up, because what I'm doing is I'm thinking differently about the problem. I'm saying to myself, okay, self, what do I need to do to get what's called the green cross across the middle of this first section? That's the starting point. That's the first move that you have to accomplish, is you've got to get that green cross, or a red cross or a blue cross. You got to get a cross on one of these as a foundation. Then you can begin moving the other pieces into place to finish the project. Well, thinking differently, thinking outside the 9 dots, requires creativity, requires courage. It requires a lot of different things. You got to change your point of view. I always teach people to look through the eyes of the customer. Okay, especially in these difficult times that we're dealing with right now with COVID-19 and all the social unrest and so forth that we're going through as a society, a lot of people have a closed mindset. And that closed mindset is where we get the friction, right? We get a lot of friction when we have a closed mindset. Well, if we get focused on actually opening our minds and listening instead of yelling, and understanding instead of assuming, and actually sitting side by side with our friends and neighbors that may have different points of view, and actually understand, or at least listen to their point of view with open mind, it's amazing how much better things are in your life and also the lives of others. A good, honest conversation helps us grow. It helps us look outside the boundaries of our little world and say, they got a point there. And I wish they would listen to me on my points. So how do we get that conversation going? Well, we have to be open and honest. We have to be willing to pick up a jumbled up mess, learn what it takes to resolve that, to get some chaos straightened out, get it turned into some sort of order, understand what does it take for you to get this mess cleaned up. So there's another one that just got in the right place, because I know where they go and I know what needs to happen to make it get there, right? So when I move and I move and I move, all of a sudden things are starting to fall into place. I'm thinking outside of the box. That's the tradition of how things have always been done. So these imaginary rules in our mind that say, you need to do this and you need to do that, we need to buck them. We need to buck those rules. We need to say, you know what? Just because it's the way my granddad did it doesn't mean it's the way I need to do it, right? That's just reality. I mean, think about this. My granddad, who started in the HVAC industry back in the 1940s, he didn't have things like what we have today. He didn't. If he came back right now and I showed him this and I told him what it did, he'd be like, what? We never have anything like that. Or if I showed him this, right, an infrared camera, and he'd be thinking, man, how did you get an x-ray machine in your hand? I mean, that's crazy. But he didn't know any of this stuff. He didn't know then what we know now, right? Because the technology has changed. Thinking differently and thinking outside the 9 dots is not something that's going to change you overnight, but it'll change your perspective and how you do what you do. When you change your mindset and you start doing things a bit differently, guess what? Your whole attitude changes. And so does that of your customers and your teammates. And that, my friend, is why looking through the 9 dots or looking outside the box, that is what allows you to see the invisible and do something about it. Good luck to you. Have a great week. Be safe out there. Be healthy. and be smart and get yourself looking outside the 9 dots. See you next time.
Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm just going to kind of explain my transition during this pandemic. You know, those of you that know my story, probably 15 years ago, you know, it was a pretty dark time of my life, but I bounced back, made some very specific goals, was able to get my family rallied, bought a house, renovated it, and 5 years ago, accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. But once I did that, what's interesting about what everybody's saying now, my patterns became habits. And that tends to lend towards complacency in what I did. Instead of taking the time to stop and celebrate accomplishing a feat, and then redesigning the way I approached things so I could spend more time doing the things that I really should have been doing, just didn't happen. So there's a way that seems right to the man, but in its end, it's the way to death. I read that when the pandemic happened because I flew back to my house in Carmel. Family was in other areas. I was quarantined for a couple of weeks. So, and I figured everything was done. So this spoke to me that, and Jennifer talked about it a bit too, you know, there's 2 dates on a tombstone. It's the beginning and the end. And how did you put it, Jennifer? If you have a timeline and you start tearing away at all your preparations, you have about this much left to really enjoy what you need to be doing. And that spoke to me a lot. I appreciate that. And that's what spoke to me about this. If you could advance the slide, please, Ben. So we talk about intention and direction. So direction determines the destination. So the question I had to ask myself is this. It's from Jen Rome. Are all of the disciplines that I'm currently engaged in is it taking me where I want to go? Man, when I started contemplating on that, I had to be honest with myself. I had no idea where I wanted to go because I simply was too busy in my complacent habit of jumping on a plane 46 weeks out of the year. As long as my schedule was full, I'd come home on a Friday night, say hi to the family, say bye on a Sunday or a Monday, and repeat the process. And it really didn't line up with what I wanted, but that was my fault because I never had enough confidence to take the time to think and plan. And so I had to face some demons during that time too, to make that happen. If you could advance it, please, Ben. So, and this is what I have a real challenge with. Begin with the end in mind. Well, what is the end? Is it me for the rest of my life until I retire or die? Going to be on airplanes 46 weeks out of the year. I didn't want that. But then I started, you know, I came across this, seven habits. All things are created twice. There's a mental first creation and then the actual doing. My challenge is I'm a doer. I had 32 trees that were anywhere from 80 to 120 feet tall that were dead on my property. Instead of hiring somebody to do it, I just grabbed a chainsaw and an articulating jib and went out and cut them all down. That's why I walk a little bit crooked right now. I didn't want to take the time to plan it out. And this has been real hard for me, very difficult for me, but I gave it a shot. The mental of a first creation, and then the physical or second creation to make all things, to make it work. Go ahead and advance, please, Ben. Uh-oh. Okay, well, that's an awesome book. If you guys haven't read it, I highly advise you to go ahead and read that. So people often say that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. So it's absolute truth. Mindset and getting outside of the box and making yourself uncomfortable and, in my situation, vulnerable because for the longest time, I wanted to do it all myself. But once I determined the next step for me, my family, and everybody else, I suddenly realized that I couldn't do it by myself. And that was terrifying. I had to rely on other people. And at that point in time where I was, I could count on one hand how many people within the business that I consider friends had never taken advantage of the situation from me. So people often say that motivation doesn't last. So I had to get my mind right, my attitude, my behaviors, my actions, results. How you think determines how you feel determines how you act, and those actions determine outcome. And that was a hard lesson to learn. Let's go one more, Ben. So then this, the whole of life is but a moment of time. It's our duty, therefore, to use it and not to misuse it. This for me, put everything into perspective. I mean, if I'm going to get a little philosophical, I will. Every grain of sand that goes through that hourglass is a moment in time that we'll never get back. A moment in time. It's our duty to use it and not misuse it. And that was a difficult shift for me to clearly understand. So I started contemplating on the moment in time when the pandemic happened and what I thought I was supposed to be doing was gone. And then I started thinking, well, how could I reinvent myself? So we had, the virtual thing was going on. We had a few virtual sales classes that we did, but it just wasn't it. It just didn't work. But then with collaboration with Jennifer and Matthew and the group on this team that I have a lot of love and respect for, I have to tell you, they helped me piece a few things together. And it's made a difference. So I can tell you absolutely right now that I have a clear vision of what the next step is, because I was forced to take the time to think, what do I want my life to look like 10 years from now? How could I accomplish that, and how do I make that happen? And the planning phase with the collaboration was phenomenal. And I'm not here to pitch this at all. The result is, offering a service that online we can convert leads, connect them with virtual comfort advisors. Right now I have a staff of 9, soon to be 10, and sell online and deliver signed contracts in a contractor's inbox. I didn't put myself on the front line this time. I've got structure to it. I had a couple of managers that are very good at selling. They recruited some talented salespeople. And my role is to make sure that the intention, the mission, the why, the brand, the purpose is all in alignment while they're focusing on the direction. So intention without direction is ridiculous. I mean, you jump in a car, you're going to drive to St. Louis. Well, drove through St. Louis, you wind up at the ocean. What good is it, right? You're lost direction. So there has to be a balance between those two things. And for me, the lesson of making the time to reflect, making the time to make sure everything is on track and everything is going the way it should be is so important. And I'm embarrassed that I went 5 years in a complacent and habitual pattern that really didn't accomplish a whole lot. But super excited this time that with the help of this team, put me on a different path that I believe is going to help a lot of people lift themselves out of, extraordinary situations. So thanks for everybody on the team. God bless everybody else, and take care.
Thank you so much to everybody on this panel. This has been a really fun journey. Next week, we're going to continue part 2 of our 7 habits of highly effective HVAC entrepreneurs. And we will be giving you some really good takeaways from each of these concepts that we've introduced to you this week. I would encourage you to invite as many friends and as many other acquaintances that you have in the industry for next week, as I believe the final 2 weeks of this presentation are going to have a lot of great how-tos and very valuable information as we look to continue to thrive in this new normal that we're in. As always, as we end every single one of our shows, I want you to continue to look for ways to embrace technology as we move forward, and also make sure that you thank and encourage your people that are working with you and for you. Continue to build them up. They are the foundation of your organization. We will see you all next week. Thank you again. Talk to you soon.